listening to
Catholic Sprout,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith.
Hello, Sprouts. Today is Friday, July 14th, and is the feast day of St. Kateri Tekakwitha. I'm Chris Carstens, and I've been glad to be your guest host for the week. I work in the worship office for the Diocese of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and am the editor of a prayer publication called the Adoremus Bulletin. But mostly what I do is help people to pray, especially my kids to pray, and especially at the Mass. And praying the Mass has been our topic for the week. So today, on this final episode of Praying the Mass, we're going to listen to those words that come at the end of Mass. Go forth, the Mass is ended. Now, Mass can sometimes be long, and I think if we don't know how to pray it, it can even become boring. But we do know how to pray it now, or at least know how to pray it a little bit better. Still, God doesn't want us to be in Mass all of our lives. He wants us to be out there in the world, in our homes, in school, at baseball practice, swimming lessons, riding our bikes, whatever it is we might do. That's where most of us live most of the time. We're not in church most of the time. The dismissal to go forth, the Mass is ended, calls us to return into the world and all of those things that we do, and to help to make it a more happy, beautiful, joyful, redeemed place. There's a wonderful story in the Old Testament about Moses talking with God. The people didn't want to talk to God. They were almost afraid of him. So they said to Moses, "You go up to the top of the mountain and you talk to God and we will stay here." So this is what Moses did. He went atop of a mountain called Mount Horeb and spoke to God for days on end. And being in the presence of God, talking to him face to face, something remarkable happened to Moses. The skin on Moses' face began to reflect God. It became bright and shiny and beautiful and radiant. So at the end of his talking with God over these days, he went back down the mountain and he went back into the camp of the chosen people. And when they saw him, they were all stunned because these beams almost were coming out of Moses' face because he had been in the presence of God for so long. Well, the Mass is like our occasion to go see God face to face. And if you've heard these podcasts, this is what we've been trying to do, to see Jesus in the door, in the sign of the cross, to hear him in the words of the gospel, to encounter him on the altar and the gifts that are given to God. See, we encounter God face to face, and we begin to soak up his own beauty and radiance, and then the dismissal, "Go, the Mass is ended," is a command for us to leave the Mass and go back into the world and radiate God's own beauty and love to those who are sad and hopeless around us. See, the saints are the most beautiful people in the world because they know how to encounter God, and they're very close to God, and they talk to God very often. And what happens to them is they begin to look like God and talk like God and love like God and serve like God. In fact, think for a moment who your own patron saint is, or maybe you have even more than one. They're such beautiful people because they reflect God's own radiance and not our own sadness and fallenness and sinfulness. So the next time you go to Mass, this is what I want you to think of when you hear those final words, "Go, the Mass is ended," and we say, "Thanks be to God." I want you to think about somebody you know and who you will see that week at school, or again at baseball practice or t-ball practice, or somebody in your family. Think about someone who needs the light and the love of Jesus that you now have, and how you can carry that light and love to them and reflect it to them after the Mass. See, know that God wants you to be joyful and beautiful and happy in the world. He wants you to be a saint in the world. And if we can pray well at Mass, this is exactly what can happen to us, just like it happened to Moses and just like it happened to our patron saints. So give it a try next time. God bless.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be.
Parents, if you would like to learn more about teaching your kids to pray the Mass, or would like to learn yourself how to go deeper in your prayer at Mass, consider my book, A Devotional Journey into the Mass, published by Sophia Institute Press. Or check out the Adoremus Bulletin at adoremus.org. God bless you, and pray well.
This podcast is part of the Spoke Street Network. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.